Thank you very much. I thought I'd start with the Andy Swan look, but as I'm being strangled, I am going to have to undo that. And today I'm stepping outside my comfort zone. I've probably delivered about 400, 500 talks. This is the first one ever in jeans. Okay? So it feels very, very strange. So, if you were here 2 years ago, my colleague Oliver actually delivered his talk in shorts, which is, I've fired him 17 times since and he still keeps coming back. But a couple of things. Herman Miller, we are one of the largest office furniture manufacturers in the world. This is the kind of stuff that we do. And that's about the only advert. But I would advertise an event we've got tomorrow in London, and you can sign up for it today. We have a pride party, tea party. I'm sure there'll be more than tea. But it starts tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock in our showroom in Aldwych. If you Google Herman Miller Pride Party on the Eventbrite, do sign up. We've got about 80, 90 people signed up for that. So do sign up and come along and join us tomorrow. So, we are about places. But inevitably, when we are designing product for places, we start with people. And that is the kind of gist of today's talk. But I thought I would like to tell you a story, certainly in light of Curtis's talk yesterday. Our founder was a guy called DJ Dupree. He founded the company in the 1920s. It was called Herman Miller because his father-in-law lent him the money, and his father-in-law was called Herman Miller. Good idea, always keeping with the rich in-laws. Small Midwest company in a place called Holland in West Michigan. And he tells this story, and you can Google this story. He's actually on YouTube telling this story. But he tells the story of what he calls the millwright and the poet. One of his workers sadly died, a small factory they had, but one of his factory workers, who was a millwright. In the UK, we call them tool makers, the people that keep the machines running. Sadly, he died. So DJ, in quite a small community, went to visit the widow. And as he walked in, he saw beautiful crafts around. I said, wow, this is amazing. This is incredible. Who made this? And he said, that was my husband. And he thought, oh, I didn't know he did that. I thought it was just a millwright. And then at the church service, he was asked to read out the poetry written by the millwright. And it really, really challenged him. And he said by the time he got back to his house, his attitudes towards employees changed. And he said this, we are all extraordinary. He said, I asked myself a question that day. Was he a millwright or was he a poet? And that whole idea that actually, who are you? And in a minute, we're going to be breaking into groups. And I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves to people around you with your name and your hobby. Can you do that in a minute? So as you get into your groups, hi, I'm Mark, I'm a guitarist. Pretty bad guitarist, but that's what I love to do. I'd like you to do that. So let me give you a bit of background. We do lots of research. Inevitably, it leads to products, but we start off with research about people. So we started to try and understand people, and we call this fundamental human needs. So this doesn't appear to be working. But first of all, I want you to shout out from the audience. We're not going to run around with a microphone. One word that describe what makes a good day at work good. Just one word at a time, preferably at different times, that would be useful. One word that makes a good day good at work. Wine, did someone say? Okay. Tea? People? Smiles? Humor? Conversation? Learning? Results? Fulfillment? Flow? She was a lovely lady. I love working with her. Freedom? So all the kind of things that make a good day good. And so we started to try and understand this a little bit more. And we did some research around this. And one of the first things we created is we call this the engine of prosperity. Wow, prosperity. Kind of a big word, but we want to move away from prosperity being about the money in your pocket. A great quote recently that some people are so poor, all they have is money. That actually what we think true prosperity is a balance between passion and profit. That actually you love your people, and we put that love in a spreadsheet, and we balance that with the money, okay? So if all you ever work for is money, I've got some news for you, you will never have enough. The other thing is we need to balance it with passion. So you have a job that you love and you look forward to, and we want to try and understand what is it that gives people passion and gives them the kind of desire to go to work. The other thing on this axis is the balance between the individual and the corporation. And getting that balance right is really important. Recognizes that we are all individuals, but we're also part of a group and part of a corporation. And we call that the living office. And we've kind of tried to study what it is you do at work during the day, or if during work, and we've come up with this codified activities. We then try and look at the business personality as opposed to just your individual personalities. But behind this, my colleagues started trying to understand what we call human dynamics, what drives us. So we started to try and look at the fundamentals in people, not in business. And someone yesterday said if it's good for all people, good for individual, it's probably good for the organization. So we didn't go to those books that you've all made notes of that you're all going to read, that you buy at the airport, and about 6 months later you think, oh, I must read those at some time. This is, we studied historic sociological studies, psychological studies about individuals and trying to understand what is it that motivates people and what drives people. So as an 80-year literature review, it didn't take 80 years, but we looked back mainly over 80 years. Having said that, some of our material was 1,000 years old. So that was quite interesting as well. And then we started to try and understand the sociology of work. The two things we were trying to understand, first of all, is how people affect their environment. And would you agree people do affect the environment? I heard someone described recently as a mood hoover, which I thought that was really good. You know, they walk into a room and it's like, no. As opposed to some people, so Bertie and I have a colleague called Shazia. When she comes into a room, it lights up and it's just a delight for her to be with us. The other thing is how environment affects your behavior. So the very nature of this room is a very different dynamic to if it were cabaret tables. And if ever you need to convince anybody about the impact of place on behavior, take them shopping to IKEA. Okay? Anyone been to IKEA for one item and actually came out with one item? It doesn't happen, unless you're really, really brave, just to prove me wrong. But you go in, they've even put lines on the floor. There's no law. Let me tell you, there is no law. You won't get told off if you don't follow that line, but we do. We kind of follow that line. We're only going in for 20 glasses because we've got a party coming up. And, oh, look at that light. Oh, my life is not complete without that light. And you kind of go around and then you go through rugs. Oh, look at that. How much? That's incredible. And you kind of go, oh, look at that lovely picture of a stone on a beach. You know, and you come out and then you suddenly think, oh, look at the queues. I might as well buy a few more things. And it's that whole thing of, you're being played with. It affects our behavior. And only the bravest of you go through those little gaps. And by the way, those gaps are good if you want to avoid the noisy kids section as well. That's always fun. So trying to understand how we affect place and how place affects us. And then we're going to try and be pragmatic and apply, and that's what you're going to be doing in a minute in a workshop. And the idea is to bring it back to human-centered design. This is not about designing a beautiful place, but it's actually a crap place to work. This is about designing a good place to work as well. So that's really important. Sorry. So this is the kind of area we started to look at, and some of you would have studied areas like this. Military studies are always quite interesting. My US colleagues are quite interested in lots of military studies, because obviously in military, teamwork is pretty important. So trying to understand that, but looking at talent management, community science, psychology, sociology. So that's where we came to. And we came up with 6 basic fundamentals that at any one time, all of us need. Now, you can look at those, but you're going to be working on those in a minute. So we then start looking at those 6 fundamentals, and the thing that matters to us are these 3 things. Management and methods. So there's lots of leadership people, HR people. How do you manage, and what's the culture like to meet those needs? What tools and technology might you give them? And if we had if we had an hour and a half, I would probably cover those 2. But today, you're going to do a bit of research for me. Is that okay? Because we're going to try and understand a little bit about the places and how that impacts on us. So I've blanked that screen, so don't panic. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk through each of these 6 fundamental needs. Yes, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you will recognize it, okay? The thing about these fundamental needs is we started to challenge the generations at work debate. For me, it's about stage of life. If you're 40 and having your first child, it's probably going through a similar situation to someone who's 25 and having their first child. If you're getting your first mortgage and you're 50, so a lot of it is about stage of life. So we were trying to understand what is the fundamental need, whatever age I am, and also whatever culture you are, because a lot of it is very Anglo-Saxon, but we were trying to understand across cultures. Now, of these 6 fundamental needs, some of them are like, and I did this talk recently in a university, and I use these words, and they kind of look to me. It's a bit like a graphic equalizer. Anyone know what a graphic equalizer is? Yeah. So a graphic equalizer is where you adjust different sounds up and down. So some of these are more important, but they are all important, but some are more important than others for certain people. Everyone got that? The other thing of these 6 fundamental needs is these last throughout your life, and if you want to be a good parent, make sure you meet your kids' 6 fundamental needs. Also, if you want to start a criminal gang, you meet these 6 fundamental needs. I've worked in the East End of London with kids for years, and what they're looking for are these 6 fundamental needs. And if good part of society doesn't give it to them, let me tell you, the bad part of society will. So, sorry to sobering thought. So, my helpers, the great helpers here, I want you to break into groups of about 4 or 5, because I've only got 15 lots of paper, so 4 or 5. As you're gathering into groups, remember you're going to introduce yourself and your hobby. So just groups around the room. You can stretch over, lean back, and you will get pens as well. So if you could hand those around, get together in the groups. I don't mind how you do it, but I need you in groups. That'd be great. Thank you. So today, can I bring you back to the office? Is that okay? So today you are working in an office, and I'm sorry, Mr. Bufferman, I'm bringing you back into the office. I want you to work in an office, and so you've got 6 sheets of paper with each of the fundamental needs, and we're going to do it one at a time so that I can talk you through. So, everyone okay? And literally you're going to write down whatever comes to you. There is no right or wrong answer, because it might be different for Tom than it might be for Jill, okay? So if you could do that. So let's go to the first fundamental need. And some of these tie in to what makes a good day at work. Remember we said that? Amazing. So, the first fundamental need is a sense, and I've got to tell you, this is the hardest of the 6 to actually to think about how a place meets these needs. That we all need a sense of achievement. We strive for excellence and take pride in our accomplishments. That all of us, a good day is when we get home and we've done something. I call this the difference between good busy and bad busy. Good busy is when you are knackered. 9 hours I've been working today, but boy, have I done a lot. I've done everything. I can't believe, what a day, I'm knackered. So it's a little G&T, Relax, feeling good, I've achieved something. Bad busy is 9 hours, I am knackered, I haven't got a clue what I've done, and the bottle comes out. So it's kind of that's that whole sense of achievement. Remember what I said, your kids, really important. Want to start a criminal gang? Because this is the need they will meet. Because you can have bad organizations as well as good organizations. So you've got 3 or 4 minutes now to scribble on the piece of paper that says achievement, and you've all got different types of paper, but on that page that says achievement, lots of words about what might you, so you imagine your designer. We do have a managing director of a design firm in the room, so you'll all become designers today. And you're designing a place that's going to meet the needs of achievement. What features in that space? And you might then also want to include intangible features within the space as well as physical things. Any questions? Go! You're going to hear a really annoying whistle to ask you to stop, by the way. So let's move on to the next one. This is what we call security. Now here by security, inevitably we mean physical security. That's pretty important. And as I travel around the world, I did this talk in Paris a week after the bomb. Everyone thinks about physical security. I also think about ergonomic security. Obviously being in the furniture world, that's pretty important. But I'm talking about security beyond that. Something that I call social security. That actually, in a world, I feel safe to be me. That actually Herman Miller have not employed someone to be a Herman Miller clone. They've employed me to be me, and Bertie to be Bertie. And that actually, if I want to speak up and challenge, I feel safe and I feel secure. That actually, I feel okay within that environment. It might also be, one of the things that's disappearing is obviously lifetime security. My boss retired last week after 34 years at Herman Miller. In the room where we were having cake and celebrating it, there were probably 6 or 7 people that have been there longer than him. That ain't going to happen again. So how do we deal with this part of security? So security is just feeling safe. And this is, so it's both physical, social and mental security. How might place play a part in delivering that feeling of security? So I'll do the first one. Herman Miller chairs is the first one that you write, of course. So don't write that. Go for something else. So go. Okay. The next thing is a sense of purpose. And I don't think you can get a sense of achievement without what is a sense of purpose? What is it that I'm going to do today that's going to make a meaningful difference? What is it? And any of you working for big organizations, your mission statements are beautifully written. Oh, they're lovely. They're really lovely, but they just don't sometimes touch the individual. What's my purpose? What is it that I am about? That actually, what is it that I'm going to be doing? And so, interesting to hear Curtis's talk about the bin man and bin men yesterday. I retweeted an article where actually disease would come quicker if bin men stopped working than politicians stopped working. Okay, so it's that whole is a sense of purpose. So how can place deliver a sense of purpose? What might things do to help deliver a sense of purpose? Go. Now the next one you might find surprising, because I did when we first saw it. It's a sense of status. But when you look into this, we don't mean hierarchical status. What we mean is peer-reviewed status. That actually there's a kind of recognition, that we all seek recognition for contributions. So I go back to my own company because I've been there long enough to understand. So another guy retired from Herman Miller. He'd only been there 38 years. He retired about 2 years ago. In his 38 years, he never managed one person, but he was the most important leader we ever had. just because of his nature, his contribution to the business, that actually his status was more, we missed him more than anyone else in the business, senior or whatever, okay? So it's that whole idea that actually what we need is a sense of status. Remember I talked about East End kids in gangs? This is what it gives them, a sense of recognition by their peers. So how might place, and by the way, I don't mind that you think about hierarchy as well, because for some people some people are motivated, and some of you might not like that, but for some people that's the reality. They are motivated by hierarchical status as well. So we can't ignore that. So how might place deliver and meet the need of status? Go. Okay, I'm going to move on. The penultimate one. So feel free to carry on scribbling while I'm talking about the next one. And again, someone mentioned this during What Makes a Good Day, is autonomy. This whole idea that actually we seek freedom in our actions and decisions. One thing I would say to you, though, that I think about autonomy, this is my own personal view, that some people choose to be told what to do. Okay, so we have to go very careful there that we don't think that everyone has to make their own decisions. I once had a brilliant telemarketer that worked for me, and she once said to me, "Tell me what I've got to do, I'm not paid to think." Best telemarketer that I ever had, but actually she just, tell me what I've got to do, and I will do it, and I will do it really well. But this whole idea that actually we have freedom for our actions and our decisions, and you can see obviously how this ties in with security as well, but so how might you design a workplace that meets the needs of autonomy? Go. Okay, thank you. We're on to the last one now, and this one is a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness. I do think this is becoming more and more important as many workers now work thousands or hundreds of miles away from their family, and suddenly the work and home life, it blurs. So this is this whole idea that I want a meaningful connection, that actually I want to feel belonging. So we've done some research around something called social capital. In fact, Doug facilitated a workshop in the grounds of Windsor Castle. It's another story where we talked about this whole idea of social capital and this need for connectedness. And again, if you want to start a bad group, give them a sense of belonging. Okay? So how might a workplace create a sense of belonging, a physical place? Go. Thank you very much. If you can, feel free to carry on scribbling. I hope you found that interesting. You have one more task to do. So in theory, in your group are 6 sheets of paper. If each of you could grab one of those 6 sheets of paper and turn it over for me. So all have a sheet of paper each and turn it over. Because now I would like you to write on the back, in your preference order, what is the most important fundamental need? What do you think of these 6? So number 1 will be the most important, number 6 the least important. So in order, put that on the back of the sheet of paper, and then we'll collect all the papers in. Is that okay? Everyone got that? So you're rating the fundamental needs. This is your opinion. But what I love at the end is you'll see the overall aggregated opinion of that. So on the back of one of the sheets of paper, if you do. I would like to leave you, if I could, with another quote from the man I mentioned earlier, DJ Dupree. And he said this, that in the long run, businesses and business leaders should be judged not on their products, not on their profits, but on their impact on humanity. Thanks very much for your time.